Dinner with Death, Part 3. Dinner. Abigail and her mother had been held up at the store for 2 hours. Thankfully, they still had time to start their dinner and prepare for their dinner guests to arrive. While Abigail brought in the food, Mrs. Stewart turned on the gas oven to preheat dinner.
Mom, I think that was the last of it. Did you need me to help you out?
No, dear, that's fine. You get some rest and let me take care of everything. If your father calls early, tell him we got the damn bacon.
Mrs. Stewart went swiftly to work. She was tired now after the ordeal with the police. Blame was placed entirely on Mr. Clow, and though she was sure the police and lawyers could not place blame on her for the events that took place, she could not easily shrug off the feeling of guilt for having scared the poor man off in the first place.
I wonder what my husband will say when he hears the news.
It's not your fault. The guy was asking for it, not looking. And that bloke in the tribute, he's an arsehole. Don't worry.
Mrs. Stewart had been with her husband so long, her voice, heard by Abigail from the top of the stairs, was eerily similar. She used this little trick to fool the telemarketers for all the time. The phone hardly rung these days, and that meant peace of mind. Now, though, as she whipped into a fury making dinner as fast as possible, Abigail heard the phone ring. Rushing to go get it, her mother answered first.
Stewart's residence. You bag it, we tag it. What do you want?
Abigail was curious. Her mother was still on the phone. Finally, she heard her mother's voice resounding throughout the house.
I said we have guests coming over. You shove whatever you're selling. I'm busy.
Mrs. Stewart slammed the phone so hard back into the hook that it made it crunch. Something had been said on the other line to have agitated her mother so much, Abigail thought. Just as Abigail was heading back to her bedroom, the phone rang again.
Ugh! Bloody assholes. Sweetie, could you get the phone for Mommy? I'm busy slicing up potatoes for the roast.
Okay, Mom. Hello?
Abigail, I've made a reservation for 7 tonight. I wanted to ensure that my seat was reserved for me at 8 p.m.
Abigail froze, suddenly frightened by the voice of the man coming from the phone. How did he know her name?
Who is this? How did you know my name?
Whoa, calm down. It's just your Uncle Joe. What have they been doing to you? I was just calling to make sure you and your folks were still up for our dinner for 5 today.
Abigail was dumbstruck. Her uncle would often joke around and pull pranks, but this was off. Hadn't he said 7? What was going on? Her head started to spin.
Abby? Are you still there? Hello?
Oh, sorry, Uncle Joe. I've been having trouble sleeping. I zoned out a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, you still on?
Yeah, we're cooking right now. What time did you guys say you'd be over?
7.
Okay. Sounds great.
Abigail was sure that she'd heard her uncle say 8 o'clock.
I'll see you at 8. Make sure to save me a seat.
Huh?
Either you need a new phone or you need sleep. I said save us a seat, kiddo. We'll be there by 7. And tell your dad to keep you from staying up too late playing those video games or whatever it is you kids do these days.
Sure, Uncle Joe. See you later.
See you, kid.
Yes, See you very soon, Abigail.
Abigail hung up the phone, nervously, looking around the room, expecting to see the familiar face of the man in the suit. What had just happened? What did it all mean?
Hon? Who was it?
Just Uncle Joe. He said he'll be here at 7.
Okay, the roast should be ready by then. Come help me with the rest of the food, would you?
Of course, Mom.
For the next few hours, the tiredness fled from Abigail as she ran back and forth in the kitchen to help her mother with everything. It was 5:30 when they heard Mr. Stewart enter from the front door.
Hello, woman. I'm back from job as executive branch manager and something smells delicious. So what's wrong with this picture? My darling wife not trying to poison me for a change? Who are you and what have you done with my honey bunch?
I missed you too, dear. I can see you had a good day. And remember, the poison comes after the cooking. We have a daughter, remember?
Quite right. By the way, what was up with the phone call I got about some bloke getting off by a car in the grocery store parking lot? Did you have another fit of road rage again, woman?
Mrs. Stewart paused a moment to turn the potatoes in the oven over, so as to sprinkle some more seasoning on the other side of them. Mr. Stewart saw the worry in her face and knew right away she had been there.
It's not your fault. The guy was asking for it, not looking both ways. And the bloke in the tribute? He's an arsehole anyway. Don't worry.
At this, Mrs. Stewart let out a long laugh.
I knew you'd say that.
She planted a kiss on his lips and shooed him out of the kitchen to finish cooking. Abigail asked to be excused so she could talk to her father for a moment, and quickly went to go talk to him about the day's events and the reoccurring man. She found her father in the living room, about to watch the soccer game of the season. Brazil versus Australia. Her father had cracked open a beer and began to watch.
Dad? Can we talk?
Sure, short stuff. What's up?
Abigail told her father everything, in as much detail as possible. Her father watched her, cool-eyed and relaxed, never interrupting her. After she had finished telling him everything, he placed his hand on her shoulder, looking solemn.
It's nothing. Don't worry about it. I'm sure it's just Uncle Joe being a jerk, which is pretty much how he always is. Now buck up, get me another beer, and put it out of your mind for now.
Mr. Stewart lovingly gave her a slug on the arm and a kiss on the forehead as he headed over to the phone.
Who you calling, Dad?
Grandad, I want to see if he can join us. Only now just thought of it.
Abigail stood still, feeling the color from her face drain. A voice echoed in her head. I'm making a reservation for 7 tonight. Abigail quickly ran to the kitchen to retrieve a beer for her father. There would be 6 guests now, if Grandad said yes to coming. But then, who would be the 7th guest? She quickly left the beer at the coffee table for her father, and went to the restroom to look at herself in the mirror. She was a mess, hair sticking out all over the place, rings of black around her eyes, and her face looking somewhat haggard from worry.
Get yourself together, girl. Take a nap and then straighten your shit.
Abigail splashed water onto her face and decided on taking a nap and freshening up afterwards. As she dreamed, she was with her family sitting about a table with food laid out carefully. But as she looked closer, she saw worms and maggots writhing about over the food. Her father took a bite from his plate and dropped to the ground with a thud, and it went around the table this way until Abigail was left alone, sitting crying and rocking.
Don't worry, Abigail. You've nothing to fear from me.
The smoking man came from around a nearby shadow and stood next to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. He smiled, his yellow teeth flecked with bits of green. He smelled strongly of rotting flesh, and his eyes were completely black. His pinstripe suit was all pressed, crisp and clean. The sharp contrast made her blink before squeaking out a reply.
Who are you?
I'm sure not your grandmother, kid. I'm a businessman, that's all. And right now is not the time to discuss such business.
Here the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a very shiny, very old pocket watch that had an intricate engraving on it, that of a raven holding a mouse's skull while sitting on a branch, a full moon behind the branching raven.
Now is a time for you to wake up. We'll be able to discuss everything very soon. Tick-tock, little Abby. Tick-tock.
Abigail jumped awake, drenched in a cold sweat, her father standing over her.
I'm surprised you didn't hear me, Munchkin. I've been hollering at you to get ready for about 10 minutes now. It's already 7:15. Come on, get dressed.
Dad, I had another dream. This one was...
Sweetie, I don't know if you know this about the Stewart family, but we don't let anything scare us. We grab life by the balls until it gives us that bicycle we asked for back in 5th grade. No, wait, that was Santa Claus, wasn't it? Oh well, you know what I mean. Now get up. Last thing I need is for your mother to try to actually poison me.
Okay, Dad.
Abigail would have objected, but rubbed her eyes instead. Her father put on his commanding Russian accent to get her to consent to moving. Whenever he went Russian, it meant that he was be taken completely seriously, despite how ridiculous it sounded.
You move quicker or be forced into Gulag. In name of great Soviet leader Putin's Berstarsky, I will have you whipped for such capitalist slow movement.
Okay, I'm up for reals.
Mr. Stewart eyed her suspiciously, but made no comment as he left the room, leaving Abigail to contemplate what had just happened while she dressed. Part 4. Death. 7 o'clock came with the same sluggishness that time always does when people are waiting around for it to pass by. Mr. and Mrs. Halworth were much like this themselves, as they did not arrive for dinner until 15 minutes after 7 o'clock came round.
Sorry, Jenny decided to have me stop by and pick out some wine for the party. You know how she gets when she doesn't get her sherry.
I'm right here, you know.
Here Mrs. Halworth nudged the gangly Mr. Halworth with an elbow, and smiled widely at Mr. and Mrs. Stewart. She wore a bucket hat much in the style of a 1920s flapper girl, her red hair barely peeking underneath. She wore the same white and black coat she always would wear to special occasions, which Mr. and Mrs. Stewart would joke in secret that made her look like Cruella de Vil, along with an eloquent, yet simple black dress and open-toed high heels. She was very slim, save for the small whisper of a belly that she seemed to be sporting now. Mr. Halworth, on the other hand, was wearing a blue blazer, dark grey trousers, a plain white t-shirt, and a bold red tie.
It's alright, dear. We can have a drinking contest to see who can make Joseph the most uncomfortable.
Don't go giving me ideas just because he's driving us back. Plus, the sherry is for you, to congratulate you on your promotion.
Huh, thanks. I didn't get you anything.
You didn't have to, duh. My sister is making us dinner. Hey, Abby, how are you?
Mr. and Mrs. Halworth gave Abigail a large hug, each making pleasantries about her day and how tall she'd grown, and how she took after her mother's side, becoming quite the lady now.
Well, enough of that. Let's eat.
Yeah, I'm starving.
I don't know what's worse, me finally agreeing with you on something, Joe, or me having to wait so long for you to get here so we could eat.
Now, dear, don't be rude to the guests.
Mr. Stewart was wearing the same business attire that he'd been wearing since this morning. But his wife now wore a velvety green dress and matching shoes. Her hair was now arranged from the wild mess it was while cooking to a tight bun behind her head, accentuated her features rather well.
Woman, you clean up well.
How come you don't tell me that when I actually clean up after you?
It's not my fault that we have a perfectly healthy child you refuse to use as a servant. Speaking of which, Abby, did you remember to set the table?
Yeah?
Good. Now don't go making a mess, Joe. That's my job.
What? Since when is it your job to make messes for my little sister to pick up?
Since I put a ring on her finger and wed her.
Kind of like what you did with me, except with less picking me up and throwing me over your shoulders.
Once. That only happened once.
And I still feel dizzy thinking about it. Chirk.
Jennifer kissed her husband's cheek. The scene made Abigail forget all about her dreams, all about her nightmares, and all about the man who was smoking in his business suit.
Hey, Dad, what did Grandad say?
He'll be coming in after 7:30. He told me to go ahead and have us eat beforehand, so that way he can just grab a burger.
Ouch. Looks like Dad still isn't a fan of pot roast, huh?
I don't see why not. I cooked enough bacon to kill a lumberjack twice over.
Whatever, we're hungry. Where's this imaginary food you've been cooking, woman?
It's on its way, dear.
And no trying to poison me.
Mrs. Stewart left to get everything from the kitchen, as everything was still in the oven to stay warm. Joseph Halworth turned to Mr. Stewart and finally asked him about why he always treated his sister so badly.
She is the absolute bane of my existence. If I were to die tonight, she would follow me to Valhalla just to nag me more. Dear sir, that was not mean. I love that woman to the ends of the earth. She is not just my wife, nor is she just the mother of my child. She is the love of my life and the only reason I exist on this earth. From the moment I laid eyes on her, I knew I had to make her mine. Not my wife, but my partner, my equal. It's her bright shining face that helps me get through the day of that shithole I call work, just so I can come home and spend time with my beautiful daughter and my loving wife. And I would not give up a second of her time for all the money, women, or bacon in this world. There's no one in this world I would rather spend my life being miserable with.
You have the funniest way of showing it, you know?
So do you sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't insult you.
Oh, really? What about when I asked you to find where I put my earrings? What was it you said? Damn it, woman. Can't you keep track of your shit?
Abigail laughed at this, while Mr. Halworth turned red and remained silent. Mrs. Stewart then came in with the last of their dinner. They had served themselves, and Mrs. Stewart finally sat down.
Would you like a drink of the sherry, Jennifer?
No, thank you. You take as much as you want. It's yours.
Well, it looks like you're drinking alone, dear.
What? Since when did you stop drinking wine?
Yeah, when did both of you stop?
Well, a few weeks ago now. You just haven't noticed.
Yep, same for me.
Oh God, I knew this day would come. It's an intervention, isn't it?
My name is Abigail Stewart, and I'm an alcoholic.
Mr. Stewart tried to look at his angelic daughter's face as sternly as possible, but found he could not. The idea was just too funny to him. His laugh was infectious, and soon they were all laughing. They were all beginning to eat heartily now, and Uncle Joe Halworth nearly spit out his drink at the idea of Abigail drinking.
No interventions. Turns out you two are going to be proud papas soon.
Are you saying that I'm not already?
No, retard. I'm going to be pregnant again.
Don't listen to your mother, Abby. I'm still plenty proud of you.
So this wasn't just a dinner to rub in my face that your husband got a raise.
You are so dense sometimes, sweetie.
Here Jennifer planted a kiss on her husband's lips sweetly.
You're gonna be a daddy in a few months. You need to start learning a few things.
Oh my god, Mom! Yay! Is it going to be a boy? Am I going to get a sister to bully? An Aunt Jenny! Yeah! A cousin to have sleepovers with and goof off. Or blame on when I break something. I'm so excited!
As she said this, her excitement immediately turned to fear as the clock on the kitchen chimed 8 o'clock. Her stomach tightened, her eyes widened, and she could feel her pulse increasing rapidly as she breathed more shallowly, expecting for something to happen. Mr. Stewart was in mid-bite of his potato when he noticed the look on her face. Before he could make comment, there was a knock on the door.
Dad, please don't answer that.
It's alright, dear. It's just Grandad. Nothing to be worried about, Munchkin.
But what if it's not? What if it's the man in the...
Sweetie, calm down. Don't get yourself worked up over a nightmare. Everything is fine.
Mr. Stewart went to the door to see Grandad in. Abigail was panicking, however, trying to control herself as she watched the door swing open. Instead of the sleek, black-haired, smoking man she had anticipated, a small old man with many wrinkles walked in. Grandad, as he was called by everyone, was wearing a big smile. He wore a green sweater, dark khaki slacks, a green cap, and a mustard-colored shirt. His bow tie was a crazy array of purples, his hair a silvery color which shone brightly for such an advanced age. Grandad was over 97 years old, and he looked every bit the number, yet his spirits were always high. Despite his cane and somewhat stooped walk, he moved rather agilely.
So, which one of my kids is gonna give me a hug first, huh?
He spoke with a softness that matched his wrinkly skin. Upon seeing him, Mrs. Stewart rose and gave him a quick squunch, while Joseph Halworth gave him a brief hug and a large smile. Though his presence still did not comfort Abigail, who rose slowly and gave her granddad a hug in a mechanical manner.
What's wrong, Abby? Look like you've seen some kind of ghost.
I'm sorry, Grandad. I haven't been feeling too good lately.
It's well, Abby. You haven't been feeling well. It's okay. It's my daughter's cooking, I know. Here, have a bite of my sandwich.
Love you too, Dad. When was the last time you tasted my food?
Well, the last time I got food poisoning, that's when...
Grandad caught the look in Abigail's eye and knew something was wrong. He placed his rolled-up takeout bag aside and made to speak with her, when there was a sudden chill in the air. Then came the smell. A smell so foul it smelled as if rotting eggs and flesh were mashed into a sewer and rubbed into their nostrils. Everyone went silent as a figure moved out from the kitchen door. The dark figure arrived wearing a dark blue pinstripe suit which had golden cuffs with an engraving of a raven, sitting on a branch against a full moon, with a mouse skull in its mouth. His skin was a jaundiced color, his eyes entirely black, and his mouth was set into a wide grin.
Hello, everyone. I do hope I'm not late for my reservation. I've been dying to see each and every one of you again. How are you, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart? Mrs. and Mr. Halworth? Ah, Mr. Halworth Sr. It's always a pleasure to see you. And little Abigail. My, how you have grown.
At the mention of their names, each of the individuals looked up at the man and scowled at him. He nodded his dark blue fedora at them each in turn, his hands reaching up to his front breast pocket to pull out a cigarette, which he set into his mouth.
What do you want? Why have you come to us now? Can't you see we're in the middle of something?
Well, a fine greeting as ever. You've always been so goddamn charming, you know that?
I think what he means to say is, what the fuck are you doing here, you skull-faced bastard? Have you forgotten what happened the last time you came into our house? I've never seen anything scream so loud before.
Yes, well, I was thinking that we could be more civil about this set of business. Also, you're very lucky that my penis is magic.
You're lucky.
Just who the hell are you? And how do you get in here?
That, my dear, is a question for the present company. As you can see, almost everyone here is very well acquainted with me, in one way or another.
It didn't seem possible, but now his eyes seemed to be getting darker than before.
You see, I've given them all an extension. Very generously, I might add.
Generously my ass.
You've always had quite the temper, Mr. Stewart. It'd be a shame for your heart to start giving you problems in the middle of one of your tantrums.
I don't need my heart to beat your skull in, just my fists.
Ah, yes. However, you realize that the stakes have risen. You see, I've given you all an extension, including you, young Abigail. If you recall, she wasn't supposed to make it past her 3rd birthday. But after the disagreement we had that year, I let you be until your next of kin.
Just who the fuck is he? And why haven't you kicked him out? Or shot him for trespassing?
It's death, sweetie. You gave me an extension on my wife's life. She would have died 4 years earlier due to her pregnancy with your sister-in-law, because I begged him and offered him the life of Joseph in her place. He held off. When he came for Joseph, we held him off the life of my granddaughter.
Who would make that deal? Grandad, that's just wrong.
He took the deal that I gave him. And for many years after that, he kept offering me lives. I've been patiently waiting until now to take my payment.
Oh yeah? Does your bony ass accept payments in pain?
Death paused to look at him, directly in the eye. His face never changed expression, but his voice grew icy. Mr. Stewart, you and I have a debt which you've forgotten as well. Now be still your tongue, or I shall still your heart. That isn't a romantic metaphor either. You will die. Painfully.
You've tried 50 times, just today. You think a heart problem's gonna stop me?
It will if it's your unborn child who has the heart attack, instead of you. In fact, he edged closer, his eyes brimming with darkness as if emanating a dull light. His mouth widened as he stooped over and raised his hands from his sides to show his dirty cuticles and calloused hands. I can make both of the unborn children turn to stone right in their bellies if you don't shut your mouth. What about your poor Abigail? He stepped even further, Mr. Stewart stepping between his daughter and the horrific figure. I can see it now. But you all have contracts. You all shook on it. You all agreed to it. I want nothing more but to retire and have someone else do this fucking job. I'm tired of the begging, the pleading, the oh death, please, please, can I have another day? No, you may fucking not have another day. You've been given a whole entire fucking lifetime and you wasted it.
Then why put that shit on someone else? That's pretty fucked up.
I've done more than be accommodating, and more than be patient. To be honest, the only reason you're still alive is because I've to keep my end of the bargain.
Well, fuck you. You can't expect us to just hand anyone over.
Is that a volunteer in the audience? I fucking love it when they volunteer! As Death hollered loudly, the room seemed to shake. His eyes now did glow, a deep crimson as he boiled over in rage. His face contorted into a sickening snarl. His hands clenched to fists, and yet his cigarette never seemed to leave his lips. Mr. Halworth went silent, sitting down not knowing how to reply. He lowered his head and held his wife's hand as the figure stared him down.
You're a bitch, Death. If you think you can just walk into my home from my kitchen and make demands, my husband has every right to kick your ass. You don't even knock this time.
At this, Death's face relaxed and he put on another smile, this time seeming to make his eyes fade back to being all black. I do apologize. You're right. How rude of me. Well, that's me coming by unexpected and unannounced. To be fair, however, I know you wouldn't have answered me if I'd knocked. You've gotten my warnings and announcements, however. If you recall, I've been sending you messages for weeks. In your dreams and on the phone.
I just hoped it was indigestion.
If only.
So wait, you're able to do all that? Why not just kill us in our sleep like an enormous pussy you are?
Because you don't seem to sleep. You just wait. It's aggravating to see you there just sharpening your knives, drinking your beer and watching your television.
Whose knives?
In fairness, sometimes it's the crocodile.
This is why you're the only man I ever gave blessing to for marrying my daughter.
The elderly man finally stepped up towards Death. His hand went to his cane, twisting the handle so that he held it out in front of him like a blade. Excalibur? Again? Really?
Oh, you bet your grandmother it is.
How exciting. An old man and a beaten cane. Grandad rushed towards Death, making a single swipe at the tall figure with the old wooden cane. It struck Death mightily across the face, leaving a red mark in its wake. The cigarette in Death's mouth fell to the ground, spilling its contents. Death retaliated by tossing the old man clear across the room, cracking a few ribs in china that was behind him. I'm tired of these games, old man. You don't know how easily I could take you all. Why don't you come quietly for once?
Because you just broke my china.
You just broke my patience!
I think you broke my hip.
Death roared for a moment before settling, removing his hat to run his hands through his greasy, black hair in order to keep his cool. He pulled out his pocket watch and looked at the time, set the watch face open down, and left it on a nearby counter. I'm giving you all 15 minutes to make up your minds. Either give me the payment of one apprentice, or I take you all.
Or there's option C. We kick your ass and you run away with your scrotum between your hands.
Please, Howard, don't make him angrier.
Mrs. Halbert held her hand to her stomach with a look of fear in her eyes, tears shining in them. Mr. Stewart kept his mouth shut for the duration, while they all talked back and forth about what to do next.
Why not just let me go with it? I don't want you two to lose your babies because of me. And I don't want you all to get hurt when I can go.
But the problem is you're not the one who needs to give willingly. The fact of the matter is the contract states that they must willingly give up someone of their choosing. If they differ to another extension, however, the contract becomes void and I take you all, as you shouldn't have lived this far anyway. The other stipulation is that I cannot give a fourth extension.
Wait, who got the extensions?
Death pointed to Mr. Halworth Sr. 1. Then pointed to Mrs. Stewart. 2. He then pointed to Abigail. 3. And by all rights I could give you, Joseph, an extension for your wife and child. However, you would forfeit any of your remaining time to let them go. You'd never see your wife or child again. Not after tonight.
Why the fuck would I do that?
Because it's a goddamn generous offer. As I said, I'm really fucking tired of this job. It's tragic, and I hate every moment of it. I have the worst job in the world. Now I get the chance to pass it off to someone else, and I can retire. Just as my predecessor did.
So there's been more than one death?
Abigail, do you know how many people die in a day? Hundreds! Do you know how many people die in the same instant? Hundreds! Do I look like Santa fucking Claus to you?
You're far too skinny, to be honest.
Death said nothing to Mr. Stewart as he looked down at the watch. 2 minutes remained. It takes many of us to collect the souls of the living and ferry them to the next life. And we get to make deals with 0% of them. That is, until we come to our retirement age, so to speak. Then we can all claim someone else to do this job for us. It's a hard job to do at that.
How hard could it be?
Harder than your husband's fist against concrete, especially during hurricane season. You should see the reapers in Africa. They always have their hands full, though in fairness, they retire the quickest.
But then, why us?
Because your grandfather was the first to ask at the time. But time appears to be up. A shame, really. The contract has ended. And now I'm down to one option.
And what's that?
Admitting defeat and letting you lot go. Oh well. Mrs. Stewart, I understand this is your home, but would you mind if I lit up my cigarette?
Yes, I would.
Oh well, I'd better inform you of the gas that is currently filling up the room. You've all been breathing it in for some time now.
You bitch! So you couldn't kill us yourselves, you decided to take the coward's way out.
You always have the option of leaving. You always had. But you never chose to. Jennifer Halworth went to the door at this notion and attempted to get the door open.
I can't get it open. It's locked.
Here. You're right, this fucker won't budge.
Not the back door or the windows.
Oh, it seems I've misspoken. You had the option of leaving, but not anymore. Everyone began to cough and sputter, their eyes beginning to tear up. The women began to cry with the realization of what was occurring. Mrs. Halworth could be heard begging to be let out, begging for her child to live. Her cries appeared to be falling on deaf ears. Abigail stood awestruck at the situation when the man came to her side, taking her by the shoulder and leading her out to the door, which opened for him. He paused, pushed her through, and closed the door behind her, while Mr. Stewart crawled slowly, gasping for air, while he held onto Death's pants.
You let me die as a bitch.
I'm just rolling in 50s and bitches today, it seems.
I will fucking end you.
400 years too late, I'm afraid. Death shook off the dying man's hand from his trousers and paused a moment to survey the room. When he was sure everything was in order, he lifted his hat and tossed it aside. In doing so, he revealed two large welts that the stewards and their guest had not seen before. The welt seemed angry and in the middle of his forehead, which he had kept hidden the entire time. Death's smile widened and revealed his decaying teeth as the welts grew further out. Mortals. They'll believe anything you tell them. As he said this, the creature pulled out a small box of matches from his inner breast pocket and quickly lit his cigarette.
So what do we have here, Peterson?
Well, judging by the ashes, and the intensity of the fire, we're not really sure what happened. There are traces of gas leaking out of the stove.
You think someone just left the stove on over dinner?
Sure, why not?
How many bodies?
6, sir. 2 women, 3 men, and 1 little girl.
Jesus.
I know. It's terrible, right? The weird thing, though, is all these people, according to neighbors, never smoked anything. And according to our men working the scene, none of them owned any lighters, just matches which were still in the kitchen and nowhere near the origin point. In fact, there was no sign of what sparked the fire other than this.
Rookie Peterson held out a lighter with an engraving of a raven on a branch holding a mouse skull set against a full moon background.
It started near the doorway, but everyone was sitting at the table, as if they were having dinner during the time of the explosion. I can't explain what it was doing there. It was just sitting there. I don't know how anyone could light it without being incinerated the instant they struck it. None of it makes much sense. Stranger still, the lighter itself doesn't even seem to have a mark on it from the fire.
Well, I guess we'll have to keep digging. Anything else?
Not that we can see.
As she said this, Peterson looked up to see a little girl in a flowery dress watching the scene from a few houses down. She was standing behind a tree, smiling sweetly, yet her eyes seemed very dark, even under the tree's shade.
I'll be seeing you very soon.